Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and we recently had our 1000th video special where I announced the giveaway. By the way, that giveaway is still going on, where if you like and comment on this video where I went over the cards I reviewed terribly, you like and comment on it, subscribe to the channel. By the way, gotta dislike it, content's terrible. You do that and you'll be entered to a chance to win $100 worth of packs out of my pocket. And I noticed the top comment, I noticed a comment from Kyoto Somo asking, I'd love to see a video on cards that were bad when they came out, but became amazing later due to synergy with future expansions. And it got me thinking about a card like Devilsinger, which recently just kind of got busted in Wild. This card is a meta player in Wild because of Gigafin in Evenlock. You can play Sea Devil, cheat out of Gigafin, and it is ridiculous. So I thought I'd go over a bunch of cards that myself and my chat came up with today on stream over at twitch.tv/Zeddy, came up with of cards that were once unplayable garbage, became meta tyrants, at least for a period of time. We'll start off pretty easy here with a Demon Hunter, actually had a card that basically didn't see any play, was basically regarded as whatever, nobody cared about it. And that was Blade Dance. It was 2 mana at the time, and then this card came out. Marrow Slicer, Soul Demon Hunter, got these big weapons, and boom, Blade Dance became 2 mana, clear the board, and it was just way too good, got nerfed to 3, and is still 3 to this day. Soulbound Ash Tongue came into the game during Ashes of Outland and was deemed to be pretty garbage, and then all of a sudden Silas was introduced as like a free legendary people could play, and all of a sudden Soulbound, you could Silas, Soulbun, Shield Slam for a lethal combination, and all of a sudden this card became pretty good. And you're going to notice a trend, by the way, with most of these cards is they just enabled a broken combo at some point, at least the majority of them. Druid got this card, Knight of the Wild, all the way back in the Grand Tournament, and basically if it's in your hand, it reduced the cost of this card by 1 whenever a friendly beast died, and this never saw play for the longest time until as early as last year when Oracle Balloon and the whole Beast Druid package really came together, and all of a sudden this was kind of worth running because you could play it for 0 and get 2 of them, as well as with the 4/5 Beast Taunt. All of a sudden, after like nearly over half a decade of this card being absolutely useless, well, this card sees a little play in Wild now. One of the earliest examples of a whatever card becoming broken later, which is Naga Sea Witch, which had a which already rotated to Wild, and then they changed the rules of how discounts are applied on a card like Mountain Giant, and all of a sudden Naga, which was 5 at the time, you could play Naga and play 0 mana Giants and win the game. It was disgusting, it was busted, and it came kind of out of nowhere. It wasn't indicated in the patch notes. It basically seemed like a mistake that oh yeah, we meant to do that, but we'll nerf it. And it only took like a Reddit campaign from one guy paying for Reddit ads to get it done. Unlicensed Apothecary was also just a terrible card. You played as demon, you play minions, you blow up, and then the Demon Seed came out, and well, this thing kind of broke Wild because you're not dealing 5 damage to your hero anymore, you're killing your opponent. You just play a bunch of 1/1s and they get absolutely murdered. And yes, all of a sudden, like again, another card that came out, what, Mean Streets, half a decade later, became pretty damn busted and led to a card, or at least helped get another card banned from the format. Deck of Lunacy is another one where it came out, I think, during the Madness of the Darkmoon Fair, was just bad meme card, and then the standard rotation happened the next year, and Deck of Lunacy broke the game. There was only 2 10-minute spells, and they were both busted. You'd either get Survival of the Fittest, or you get the Hunter spell that would just deal insane face damage, and yeah, this got nerfed to 4 mana because of it, and it was all just because of a standard rotation, but went from a useless meme card to, yeah, just literally meta-defining broken. Another Wild specific card that became broken later was Align Cracker. Came out in Rostican's Rumble, but Bees came out a few expansions later in the Saviors of Uldum, where you could go Line Cracker, Bees, Earthern Scales, for insane armor, and is still a meta player in Wild to this day, gaining 2,500 or more armor if you really want to. Pretty ridiculous, and yes, something that you never thought was going to be anything. This useless 7 mana 5/10 became pretty darn useful later on. Another recent example of a card that didn't seem that great and became nuts was Maester the Masquerade, coming out during United and Stormwind, and then Alterac Valley introduced the knoll that gets discounted by other class cards, and it It's been nerfed, it's been reverted, it's still problematic, and it's all because of Maester of the Masquerade, which didn't seem all that good. It was really cool. It didn't seem that good, and well, now Maester enables that, and the second they nerf knoll again, if they ever do, you're still not going to get dust for this card. You may have had to craft twice to abuse knoll. Believe it or not, Aviana used to be a pretty useless card. Coming out during the Grand Tournament, it used to cost 9, but your minions would cost 1, but so what? You could play it with like an Innervate and 2 other things. That was it. Then Kuhn came out, and you could go Aviana Kuhn, refresh your crystals, and all hell broke loose. I remember it was a Cthulhu deck very early on that broke this, but you had Malago shenanigans, Togwaggle, countless things that broke this, and well, it's at 10 mana, and Guff is power corrupted anyways, so she doesn't see a heck of a lot of play, but she used to be completely irrelevant, completely broken, and even at 10, pretty busted, and now she's finally kind of fallen off. You take a look at Ticking Abomination, you'd never think that this card would be any good. It was terrible. Death Rattle, deal 5 damage to your minions. Well, Mecha'thun came out, and it came out with Reckless Experimenter, which allowed you to play Reckless Experimenter, Ticking Abomination, this 6 mana card that would cheat out a Death Rattle, and it would cheat out Mecha'thun and kill your opponent. It was convoluted, but it worked, and all of a sudden Ticking Abomination was, well, not quite the abomination after all. Another card that was always thought to be absolute garbage was Flying Machine, this 1/4 Wind Fury mech from Goblins vs. Gnomes. Never saw play throughout its entire run until Magnetic was introduced into the game, and all of a sudden you could play Flying Machine and slap a big ass Magnetic onto it to do an insane amount of damage. And well, this card has been a staple in wild mech decks ever since, but for the longest time it was just absolute trash, to the point they made a 2-mana Murloc version of this that had Rush, which was also pretty broken right out the gate. But regardless, Flying Machine, pretty good right now. Wretched Tiller, another card that, okay, it saw a tiny bit of play in some very aggressive decks where it's a 1-mana 1/1 that whenever this minion attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. But then Hysteria came out, and you could give it immune with a 3-mana 2/4, I can't remember the name of it, and you would have an OTK, because this would never die. It would just keep attacking over and over and over with Hysteria, which led to Hysteria being nerfed so that it could only target enemy minions, and then was nerfed again to 4 for balance purposes. But yeah, Wretched Tiller all of a sudden was a meta force in the wild format for like a couple of weeks. Another TGT card that became really good very later on that was pretty useless was Spawn of Shadows, 4-mana 5/4 Inspire. So you use your hero power, you deal 4 damage to each hero, whatever. But then Raza Anduin happened, and all of a sudden you had a 0-mana hero power that could go over and over and over, and Spawn of Shadows could absolutely murder your opponent and became the absolute insane finisher of the deck, to the point where people were talking about nerfing the deck in wild. They would talk a Spawn of Shadows. It went from unplayable to a nerf target. Hasn't been nerfed. That deck's been power crept out of the game effectively, but still pretty ridiculous how far it went. And our last example, I think it's on the thumbnail, so spoiler alert, it's the Darkness, most pretty recent example where Switcheroo came into the game. You could play that in wild, and you wouldn't even switch health, it just swap stats. Put it on a Stone Tusk Boar, copy your Stone Tusk Boar, murder your opponent in the Darkness. It did have a little bit of utility, wasn't completely useless, so clickbait, sorry. It could be used to tech against Reno decks, but overall, absolutely terrible card, and it finally saw home. People crafted it for the Switcheroo deck, and then Switcheroo got nerfed, and they only got dust for Switcheroo. Feels bad, man, but that's my list. Feel free to share any that I've missed in the comments below. There are a ton, and it's a really fun thing to take a look at. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friend.